Viewer discretion advised. The following is for educational and entertainment purposes only. What you're about to read is based on the verbatim federal courtroom testimony from the Sean Diddy Combs trial, as reported by Inner City Press. Nobody expected him. The courtroom buzzed, tense with anticipation as reporters whispered and eyes flicked toward the doors, waiting for the next scheduled witness. Then, without warning, the back doors opened, and in walked Will Smith. Wave of audible gasps rippled through the room. Even the judge froze. No entourage, no press release, no lawyer by his side. Just Will, silent, alone, walking forward like a man with unfinished business. Until that moment, he had remained quiet. Despite his name circling in court documents, whispers in leaked audio files too disturbing to release, and growing online speculation, he said nothing. But something had changed. Maybe it was betrayal. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was finally hearing that tape behind closed doors. Whatever it was, Will was done hiding, and when he spoke, the courtroom wasn't ready. "I wasn't asked to come here today," he began, standing tall at the witness stand. "I asked to speak." The judge nodded once. Permission granted. From that moment on, the trial cracked wide open. Because what Will said wasn't part of the media narrative. It wasn't a press cycle headline or a TMZ clip. It was first-hand testimony. It was a warning. He started slow, voice calm, but weighty. "I've laughed on red carpets. I've won awards. I've made movies about honor, about integrity. But none of that can cover what I saw, what I experienced, and who made it happen." He turned just slightly, eyes locked on Diddy. "You did." The courtroom held its breath. He said it began like so many nights in Hollywood do, an invitation. It came through a mutual contact, someone I'd worked with before. They said it was Diddy's birthday. Nothing wild, just networking, music, the usual. But from the moment he arrived, he knew something was wrong. The mansion in the hills, black SUVs, security at the gates, his phone taken at the door. They said it was for privacy, but it felt like they didn't want anything getting out. Inside, the music was strange, low, ambient, hypnotic. There were mirrors everywhere, but no visible cameras. It felt like someone was always watching. Then came Diddy, smiling. He said, "Now you're part of the family." But it wasn't a smile of welcome. It was possession. Diddy led him to a back room. What Will saw inside would change him forever. There were people, performing, men, women. Some I recognized. Some looked too young. Others stood watching like it was a show. And Diddy, laughing, like this was just another night. I didn't know how to leave, and that was the point. A few days later, he got a call, blocked number. All the voice said was, "Hope you had fun, Fresh Prince." Then they hung up. Then came the envelope. No return address. Inside, a flash drive. Will almost didn't look, but he did. Footage from that night. Of him, slouched on a couch, dazed, laughing. He didn't remember being that out of it. Behind the camera, a voice. "That's how we keep him." "That's when I realized," Will said. "I wasn't invited. I was initiated." From there, the pressure began. More invitations. He declined. Suddenly, roles he was attached to disappeared. People he trusted stopped calling. Rumors surfaced about his mental health, his marriage, his sexuality. I knew what it was. It was control. Diddy didn't have to say anything. He just let the silence do the work. So he stayed silent. Years passed. He smiled through interviews. He laughed at the memes. He won awards. But behind his eyes, there was fear. Every time he saw another name in the headlines, another blackmail thread unraveling, another victim surfacing, I knew I knew what they were feeling, because I felt it too. Will paused. I'm not here for revenge, he said, looking out over the courtroom. I'm here because silence makes you complicit, and I won't be complicit anymore. The room was silent. Even Diddy had gone still. Whatever illusion of invincibility he had left began to fracture. Will's voice didn't shake, but the system around him did. And in that moment, the courtroom no longer felt like a courtroom. It felt like a confessional, not just about one man's crimes, but about an entire industry's silence. You want to know what haunts me? Will said quietly, just before stepping down. That I said nothing for so long, but I'm speaking now, and I won't stop. Will Smith stood at the center of a courtroom more silent than ever, and then he said it plainly. It wasn't just a video, that was the leash. He looked toward the jury, then out at the press gallery. From that moment on, everything I did felt like it had strings attached. He began describing how it worked, how subtle it was, how insidious. It wasn't a threat, it was a pattern. A call would come through his agent. Would Will be attending Puff's weekend retreat in the Bahamas? He'd decline. The next week, a greenlit film project I was lined up for suddenly wasn't greenlit anymore. He paused. It didn't happen once. It didn't happen twice. It became how the industry moved. Will said Diddy didn't need to make threats. He had systems that did it for him. PR managers, gossip bloggers, studio execs, brand partners, even stylists. He knew who to call. He could make a problem appear out of thin air and make an opportunity disappear just as fast. Will described one instance in 2013. He had been locked in for a global luxury campaign, a career moment, photos already shot, contract days from signing. Then out of nowhere, they dropped me. No reason, no explanation. 2 weeks later, another invite from Diddy. Will declined again. Then came the phone calls, the blog posts, rumors about me, so specific they could have only come from someone with access. It was psychological warfare, Will said. You start to feel crazy, but it's not paranoia when the pattern keeps repeating. And then came the damning line. You didn't just collect people, Will said, staring straight at Diddy. You controlled them. The courtroom stirred. Even Diddy's lawyers looked rattled. But Will wasn't finished. He explained Diddy's influence didn't stop with artists or rappers. It reached Hollywood's foundation. You couldn't walk onto a major stage without brushing shoulders with someone he'd helped put there. He told a story from 2016, an elite charity gala. Behind the scenes, figures from tech, politics, music, and film were quietly thanking Puff. One executive from a streaming platform handed him a USB drive and whispered, "Only you have the final cut." Will didn't say what was on the drive. He didn't have to. Everyone understood what that meant. I started to see it. How people laughed too hard at his jokes. How even powerful people deferred to him in every conversation. They weren't his friends. They were his survivors. Will then revealed that staying quiet wasn't just self-preservation. I was scared. Not for my career, but because I knew no one would protect me if I spoke. He thought if he stayed silent, he'd be safe. But then I realized I was already blackballed. Quietly, no list. Just whispers, doubt, and doors closing. And still, he survived. You know what kept me afloat? The public. Not Hollywood, not producers. You. He nodded toward the press, the jurors, even the crowd. That's the part Puff couldn't control. The people. Then came the turning point, the moment that finally broke his silence. Will's voice dropped, slow, almost trembling. I stayed quiet for 20 years. I convinced myself it wasn't happening, or that it wasn't happening to me. But then the audio began to surface. He didn't believe it at first. Tapes being played in closed courtrooms, whispers about recordings, too graphic for the public. Then I got a call, not from a journalist, not from the prosecution, from someone I used to trust. They said, "Will, you're on one of those tapes. They played it yesterday. People are talking." It felt like the floor disappeared underneath me. He didn't even remember being recorded. But once I accepted it might be real, everything I'd suppressed, it all came rushing back. The courtroom was frozen. No one moved. No one spoke. Because everyone realized this wasn't just testimony. This was a reckoning. "I'm not up here for applause," Will said. "I'm up here because I won't let silence be the last word." And as he stepped down from the stand, the judge called a recess. But no one left the courtroom. Not yet. Not until they could breathe again. Part 3 can continue with the leaked audio tapes content and public reaction. Other high-profile figures. Responding in real time, Diddy's legal team scrambling to suppress further witness appearances. The psychological toll of systemic manipulation. "Relief?" Will Smith reportedly repeated to the reporter outside the courthouse. He didn't smile, didn't pause for the cameras, didn't even look back. No, not relief, just truth. The day the music stopped, inside the courtroom, the air still hadn't moved. The judge, usually the most composed presence in the room, sat with eyes lowered, as if trying to process what had just unfolded. The jurors, ordinary people pulled into an extraordinary reckoning, looked like they had just lived through something they weren't sure they'd ever forget. And Diddy, for once, wasn't performing. He sat stone still, but his hands trembled. His legal team leaned in, whispering options, objections, strategy. But he didn't move. Because when Will held up that old photo, 2004, before the first party, something broke in the room. "This was me," Will had said, "and I haven't seen him in years." A legacy rewritten. Within 30 minutes, court transcripts hit the internet. By the time Diddy's team filed their motion to strike Will's final statement on grounds of emotional prejudice, the hashtags had already gone global. Our Will Speaks. Freak off files. Diddy knew. Industry. Built on silence. Within 24 hours, a trending video collage showed a timeline of red carpet clips, each one quietly reanalyzed with a new lens. Glances exchanged, whispers captured on hot mics, eerie moments of sudden discomfort when Diddy entered a room. People saw it now. Not just Will's story, but a blueprint. The fallout. Begins. Will had predicted it. Things will get ugly. I just didn't know how fast. He was right. 2 endorsement deals vanished overnight. 1 film studio postponed indefinitely. A 2025 release where Will was a co-lead. Anonymous sources began leaking concerns about his mental stability. The same system that once silenced him was now trying to discredit him. But this time, it wasn't working. "He's not unstable," one actor tweeted. "He's uncontrolled, and that's what terrifies them." Private texts turned into quiet allies. Some came with thanks, others came with warnings. "You don't know who you just declared war. You made yourself radioactive." Still, Will stood by every word. "Let them leak whatever they want," he said. "They took my voice once. They won't take it again." A network exposed under cross-examination, the prosecution asked Will about names. Big ones, he didn't elaborate. Legal reasons. But he nodded when asked about Kevin Hart, Meek Mill, Lucian Grange. "This isn't a Diddy problem," Will said. "It's a whole infrastructure of silence. Everyone's been trading in that currency." "What shook me most," Will said softly, was what I didn't remember. The last words in court before leaving the stand, the judge allowed Will to speak directly to Diddy. He stepped forward, no podium, no notes, just the truth. You built an empire out of manipulation. You called it culture. You called it love. But all you built was fear. He paused. I saw what you did to those girls. I saw what you did to me. I heard the things you said when you thought I wasn't listening. And then, he pulled something from his pocket. A photograph. This was me. Right before the first party, he held it to the court. I haven't seen him in years. And then he turned to the jury. If you think this is just about me or Cassie or one night in a mansion, you're not seeing the whole picture. This is a network of power built to erase people and replace them with silence. Then he faced Diddy one last time. You once said nobody parties like Diddy. Well, nobody lies like you either. The exit Will didn't look back, didn't wave, didn't pose. He walked out of the courthouse with his head high and shoulders heavy with the weight of 20 years. The crowd outside didn't cheer, they just watched, like something sacred had just happened. And they knew they were witnessing. The moment a survivor reclaimed himself. When asked again by press if he felt relieved, Will finally answered, "No, I just feel real." Would you like a continuation of Part 4, including fallout across the music and film industries, reaction from other stars, some defending, others exposed, Diddy's legal team attempting counter-narratives, the beginning of systemic collapse? By Monday morning, boardrooms looked more like bunkers. One major talent agency pulled all artists from upcoming press tours, citing unforeseen reputational risk. A streaming platform abruptly pulled an upcoming documentary, one Diddy had co-produced. Studio heads were asking uncomfortable questions about past donations, party invitations, private trips, and NDAs. Everyone was suddenly checking their calendars, their inboxes, their memories. And the internet? The internet was excavating. Clips long thought innocuous were being reframed. Photos from 2007, press junkets from 2012, a too-long handshake, a strange smirk. That odd question someone once dodged on Fallon. It was no longer paranoia. It was pattern recognition. Will's post, a message. Without a name, the day after his testimony, Will Smith broke his silence again. Not with words, but with a photo. Black and white. 1993. A younger Will, early Fresh Prince era, standing on a film set, smiling, sunlit. The caption? He didn't know what was coming, but he made it through. I'm proud of him. No hashtags, no explanation, no Diddy. It didn't need one. The post went viral instantly. 8.2 million likes in 12 hours. Comments flooded with stories, affirmations, and grief. Men, especially male survivors, began to speak. I never thought I'd say it out loud, one wrote. But if Will can, maybe I can too. The photo became a symbol, printed on posters, used as a profile picture, even projected onto the side of the courthouse by activists the following night with the words, "We believe him." The system begins to splinter. Behind the courtroom doors, panic was accelerating. Diddy's legal team was no longer just preparing rebuttals. They were preparing containment. Rumors swirled. Multiple sealed tapes existed. Some audio, some video. A few allegedly featured other powerful names, from rappers to studio execs to government donors. A tech platform was subpoenaed for encrypted chat logs. Insiders whispered that the court was now working overtime to determine which materials could be unsealed, which names would be redacted, and how far the rot had spread. What Will had done wasn't just a personal catharsis. It was the first swing of a wrecking ball aimed at decades of coordinated silence. Healing, not hiding. Despite the chaos, Will didn't disappear. But he didn't. perform either. He canceled red carpets, pulled out of press events, and turned down every late-night interview offer, even the sympathetic ones. One friend, anonymously quoted by Variety, said, "He's not hiding, he's healing. For the first time in years, he's not pretending. No apologies, no image rehab, just stillness, and that stillness was powerful." The judge's unexpected statement. Before adjourning court that day, the judge did something unusual. He paused, looked over the room, then said, "What we heard today was not just testimony, it was a reckoning. And this court acknowledges the courage it took to deliver it." Even the press pool looked stunned. Judges don't speak like that. But this wasn't a normal trial. This was a turning point. The final shot. The last image from the day wasn't Will. It wasn't Diddy either. It was the jury. Frozen, teary-eyed, stunned. Ordinary people. Now witnesses to something extraordinary. As the courtroom emptied, the message wasn't stated, it was felt. The era of silence was over. And now, everyone would have to decide which side of the truth they were on. Would you like the next installment to follow? The media fallout, including who stands by Will and who tries to pivot. The leaked tapes and what happens when the industry can no longer pretend? Or a full narrative rewrite of all parts combined into a polished novelistic exposé?